No More Heroes. Now this is a series that's special to me. Pretty much everything about my channel's branding is a reference to the series in one way or another. My intro is a reference to its boss loading screens. My channel banner features the famous star emblem from the series, and the background is a heavily distorted image of the hotel from the game, and even my current avatar, which was drawn by Original Zin on Twitter as a commission from my ex, features me dressed as the series' main character, Travis Touchdown. I first played these games about a decade ago, when I was around 12 or 13 years old. I remember seeing it be tangentially mentioned in YouTube videos, and just being mesmerized by what I was seeing. The stylish, wacky, intensely bloody gameplay was unlike anything I'd ever seen before, and there was one thing that I knew. I needed to play it. So I convinced my dad to buy it for me, and the rest was history. I've been playing and replaying this series very regularly since then. I've owned multiple copies of the Wii originals, I bought the Switch digital versions, the Steam version, and even went out of my way to scoop up the $160 limited run games collector's editions. This is a series that's had a massive impact on my interests going forward. I directly attribute this series to my current appreciation for things like JoJo and the Yakuza series. This was my first exposure to that specific brand of off-the-wall Japanese wackiness, the kind that does whatever it wants and doesn't really care what you think of it. So to celebrate the release of No More Heroes 3 after a decade of silence, let's take a look at the game that started it all. Let's find that exit they call Paradise. No More Heroes was developed by Grasshopper Manufacturer, and was written, directed, and designed by Suda51. If you frequent certain gaming circles on the internet, or just have an interest in gaming history in general, you've probably heard Suda's name mentioned at one point or another. He's one of those Japanese developers, kind of like Hideo Kojima, who's known for his extreme commitment to his specific style and aesthetic. Some of his other games include stuff like Killer 7, Killer is Dead, Let It Die, and Lollipop Chainsaw. His magnum opus, though, is definitely No More Heroes. It's his only game to spawn a long-running franchise, and easily his most well-known work. Side note, Suda is a gem of a person. Whenever he appears at press events or interviews, he's always so energetic and passionate about whatever he talks about, and he's always game to hold interviews and discussions with fans of his works. This is a guy with just as much passion for his creations as his fans, a true passion-driven auteur in the gaming industry. Development-wise, No More Heroes was originally planned as an Xbox 360 game, but focus eventually shifted to the Wii due to the unique opportunities that the Wii's control scheme allowed for. In the long run, I'd say this was a good decision, since having a very visible M-rated exclusive on the Wii probably helped get way more eyes on the game than if it were just a generic M-rated 360 game. No More Heroes as a game is heavily rooted in satire and references, down to the name of the series being directly ripped from a 1977 album by the Stranglers. Pretty much every major character in the game is based in some part on a real-life actor or celebrity, with the main character, Travis Touchdown, being based in looks and partially personality on Jackass star Johnny Knoxville. Suda apparently showed his designers a specific Jackass clip of Knoxville being bit in the nipple by a baby alligator to, quote, articulate the kind of character Travis was meant to be. Other references include Sylvia being based on Scarlett Johansson, Henry being based on Ian Curtis of Joy Division, and many others. Suda had stated in interviews that he wanted to make No More Heroes one of the most violent games ever made, with a goal to even surpass Manhunt 2, a game that had been banned in multiple regions due to its violence. As a result, the game's original Japanese and European releases were heavily censored, removing the series' trademark blood in favor of Dark Mist. The North American release remained uncensored, however, and later releases such as the Steam and Switch ports would remove the censorship in all regions. No More Heroes eventually released in very late 2007. 2007 was all around a banger year for games, seeing a ton of notable releases including Super Mario Galaxy, Halo 3, BioShock, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, and many others. Comparatively, No More Heroes was a somewhat smaller release, but it still managed to sell decently well in America and especially Europe, where its publishers were apparently crying with excitement and happiness over its numbers. Its sales in Japan, however, were dismal. There is a story of an incredibly sad Japanese launch event attended personally by Suda, where so few people showed up to buy the game that a Famitsu reporter bought one out of pity. Like I said though, sales in other regions were much better, and the game actually reviewed quite well on top of that. I think this is a sort of Mandela effect thing, because I remembered this game getting mixed reviews from what I first read, but no, it's got like 7s, 8s, and 9s across the board. Critics praise its satisfying gameplay, sharp and satirical writing, its characters, and its music, though some criticism was drawn towards the game's repetitious nature, open world, and required mini-games for money grinding. Its worst professional review came from Game Informer, who gave it a 6 out of 10. Most other publications, though, were much more generous. Overall, though, the game was enough of a success commercially and critically to go on to be the basis for an entire series. Story-wise, No More Heroes follows Travis Touchdown, a 27-year-old otaku who loves anime, video games, and professional wrestling, lives in a motel, and fights using a bootleg lightsaber he bought on eBay. He's a brash, rude, angry, childish, horny jackass with a short temper and a foul mouth. Sound like anyone familiar? Oh shit, he's me when I first played this game. And you, and anyone who would be interested in playing a game like this. Travis is designed at a base to be a direct parody of gamers and otaku culture in general, and is specifically designed to be a joke at the expense of the kind of man-children who act like him. Throughout the game, he's explicitly characterized to be a creepy loser who's below everyone he meets in fights. Every moment Travis does something cool or badass, he's almost always torn down afterwards. In one cutscene, he'll be literally cutting someone in half, but in the next, he'll be getting a call from his local video store saying that his account is suspended because he didn't return a weird porn movie. Travis has big Rick Sanchez energy, where if you play the game and identify with him, you're fundamentally missing the point of the character. He's meant to be an example not to follow, not someone to look up to. It's fine to like the things Travis likes. Him being an anime fan and a gamer isn't the problem. It's his personality and how he acts. It's not his interests that make him a man-child, it's his mannerisms. I've heard a few people describe Travis as edgy, but he's really not. Sure, maybe his design, but once you actually see his actions and behavior in game, it becomes abundantly apparent how much of a loser he is. Travis is designed to be the least cool character in any given scene that he's in. You may be wondering, why would you design a main character to be explicitly hateable, and it is meant at a base to service this game's satire. This game is about tearing down video games and video game conventions, and I think a main character like Travis services that goal extremely well. He's all around one of my favorite video game characters, but not because of how he acts. Our story begins with Travis describing the events leading up to the game. He lives in Santa Destroy, a fictional California-based city that's dangerous, dingy, and all around terrible to live in. In a bar, he meets Sylvia Christel, a mysterious woman who offers him a job: assassinate a drifter. Travis, being at rock bottom, accepts and does this handily, only for Sylvia to reveal to him that he's now ranked in what's called the UAA, or United Assassins Association, a ranked killing game where professional hitmen fight each other in death matches in order to climb a ranking ladder. If you're rank 10, you kill rank 9, you become rank 9. It's simple. Everyone's gunning for the top spot, and Travis, realizing that he has no real choice due to him being ranked and having the constant threat of people killing him hanging over his head, agrees to fight through the ranks, spurred on partially by Sylvia's promise of sex if he reaches the top spot. Following this, Travis begins his fight through the UAA, killing 10 assassins in boss fights with many twists, turns, and developments along the way. Things proceed as normal at first, but upon reaching rank 5, Travis's target is killed by another mysterious assassin by the name of Henry, who recognizes him. Before they can fight though, Sylvia calls him off due to it violating the UAA's rules, and tells Travis, due to his target dying, that he's now rank 5. The fights continue as normal, with Travis's demeanor noticeably changing along the way. He becomes increasingly jaded, tired, and uncomfortable with his current circumstances, culminating in the lead up to the final ranked fight, where Sylvia disappears and her mother tells Travis over the phone that the entire UAA was a scam set up to con killers, and that the only thing he can do now is finish his fight. This is probably one of the only real bits of clumsy writing in the game, since it raises a lot of questions about the nature of this con, and just how it affects every other assassin and the nature of the game as a whole. Plus, the UAA exists proper in later games in the series, and Travis willingly participates, so this is probably just a plot twist they included before they realized this game would get any sequels and later abandoned. Though I do like this line.
You're joking, right? Do you know how many people I've killed?
In my playthroughs, I usually do the side mission where you have to kill 100 enemies several times, so that number is in the thousands for me. Regardless, Travis sets out to kill rank 1, a flagrant Darth Vader parody named Darkstar, who goes so far as to tell Travis that he's his father. Before any elaboration can be done though, Darkstar is killed by a mysterious woman named Jean, who tells Travis that he wasn't his father, and reveals the true nature of what's going on. She's Travis's sister, who killed their parents due to their father's abusive behavior. Travis then remembers what really happened between him and Sylvia on the night they met at the bar, with him lamenting his sorrows in a drunken stupor, and Sylvia getting him involved in the UAA specifically so he could find and kill Jean. Jean then reveals through a sped-up explanation and a clever Duke Nukem reference in a 2007 Japanese game, Jesus Christ, everything that had happened leading up to this, and the fight between her and Travis begins. Jean seems to get the upper hand, but Travis is saved by Shinobu, an assassin he had fought earlier in the game and let live, and he deals the tragic killing blow on Jean.
But wait! Protège-moi!
If you choose to get every unlockable beam katana in the game, you're treated to the true ending, where a returning Henry saves Travis from being killed while he's on the toilet, and challenges him to one final fight, saying that he's an embarrassment to himself and everyone that he's killed. Following a very difficult super boss, Travis and Henry's fight continues into a cutscene, with Henry revealing that he's both Travis's twin brother, and that he's Sylvia's husband of 10 years, which I guess technically also makes Sylvia Travis's stepsister.
Stepbrother, help!
Travis and him clash swords as they run up the street, with Travis lamenting these last-minute reveals and desperately wanting an escape from his current situation. Henry tells him that there is no escape, and the game ends with Travis and him clashing swords one last time. I love this ending for multiple reasons, but one of my favorites is that it effectively ends with Travis being cucked by Henry. If Travis actually got to have sex with Sylvia, this ending would be way less funny and impactful. You can't give a character like this what he wants. In addition, it wraps up all of the game's loose ends really nicely and leaves us on an exciting cliffhanger, especially considering that this game wasn't originally planned to get a sequel. It was very up for interpretation. The fourth wall breaks and references to paradise, a running theme in the game, are also extremely clever and well implemented. Also, Henry is great. He's similar to Travis temperamentally, but is more mature, collected, and cool-headed. He also had Kylo Ren's sword years before Kylo Ren was ever a thing, but it's pink and not red, so it's infinitely cooler. If Travis is a fake badass, Henry is a real badass. Thematically, the game is primarily rooted in satire and tearing down gaming conventions. Aside from Travis being Travis, there were plenty of moments where characters actively acknowledge that they're in a video game and address the tropes being thrown at them. Keep in mind that this was in 2007, way before games like Undertale and Doki Doki Literature Club really popularized these sorts of fourth wall breaks in video games. There's also a ton of characters and dialogue that are direct homages and parodies of popular tropes and characters in video game media. There's also obviously themes of violence, death, and careless destruction, which are all pretty common writing motifs in Suda51's work. In addition, there's a running theme of paradise as a concept and what it truly means for people who desire it. This would later go on to become a running thing in the entire series, with the PS3 port of this game even being called Heroes Paradise. It's a really interesting running motif. One thing that's really interesting about Travis's characterization in this game to me is that it's clearly established but never really outright said that Travis isn't comfortable killing women. Whether this stems from some rooted sexual thing or some nice guy incel mentality is up for interpretation, but it's really interesting to me. Travis fights 5 women in this game, and he only actually really deals the killing blow on 2, arguably 3 of them. He lets Shinobu live, Holly Summers kills herself when Travis can't bring himself to do it, and Bad Girl bleeds out. Sure, Travis stabbed her, but she only actually gives up and lets herself die when Travis admits defeat and says that she won. She dies beating the hell out of him. He only actually straight up murders Speedbuster because she's an old lady who killed his mentor, and Jean because he had personal baggage with her. Compare this to the men he fights, and there's a clear hesitancy on his part to kill women. This is one of several things that I feel the sequel greatly misunderstands about Travis's character, since he kills loads of ladies super hard in that game without a second thought. I'm glad the third game brought this back into focus though. It's one of the more interesting aspects of Travis's character. One last thing about this game on a writing level is the general style its dialogue is written with. Suda51's work has often been compared to Quentin Tarantino's, and you can definitely see it in this game. There is a deeply cynical and blunt style to the writing, with most characters being completely willing to throw out brutal insults and shit-talk each other. The way the dialogue is written is really unique. I don't know how to quite articulate it, but it never feels exactly like characters are directly responding to each other in conversation. They obviously are, but there's a looseness and flow to the dialogue that makes each individual line feel like it's up for interpretation. It's really interesting. Aside from that, the game is all satire, brutality, and a hard commitment to its punk rock aesthetic. I just realized I haven't talked about that aesthetic yet. Let's talk presentation. No More Heroes is interesting in that I'd say it's a very nice looking Wii game due entirely to its style. The hard shadows and shading on the characters carry this game's look so hard, and while you can clearly tell it came out in 2007, the lighting and textures are really simplistic, and on certain unimportant characters, the models are a little rough, but I still feel like this is one of the better aged Wii games visually. If it tried to look more realistic, it would look way worse. Blood is a huge part of this game's visuals, with enemies bursting into fountains of it when killed, and bosses seemingly having an infinite supply of it in their bodies. Suda wanted this game to be violent, and he definitely succeeded. Though, while it's violent, I wouldn't quite say it's gory. Hear me out. There's definitely a lot of blood, but there's not a lot in the ways of hyper-realistic violence or guts or anything. When you cut someone in half, there's no entrails, just fountains of the red stuff. Its gore is very much on the anime side of things, not on the hyper-realistic side side of things. Destroyman and Harvey are really the only bosses I can think of who get truly brutal deaths. Musically, well, No More Heroes is just amazing. If you've heard anything about this series, it's probably about the music. While I think 2 has a better soundtrack in general, this game is nothing to scoff at. Aside from the iconic main theme, there is a huge variety in the compositions, from chill backing tracks to driving battle themes. There's rock, techno, synth, punk, just a ton of styles represented. Not only are the songs good, but the song names are good too. Cashmere Cannonball, Pleather for Breakfast, Violectrolysis, and the best song name in any video game ever, We Are Finally Cowboys. My jam. The original Wii version of the game also featured heavy usage of the song Heavenly Star by Genki Rockets, but it was removed in the Switch and Steam ports due to music copyrights. With or without it though, No More Heroes has an amazing OST, and I would strongly recommend giving it a listen. Voice-wise, No More Heroes cast is pretty much a melting pot of a ton of different popular voice actors who were active around the time this game came out. We got Robin Atkin Downs as Travis, Paula Tizo as Sylvia, we got Steve Bloom, Quentin Flynn, Dee Bradley Baker, Kimberly Brooks, Carrie Walgren, and just a whole bunch of others. No More Heroes 2 would definitely continue this philosophy, featuring a ton of popular voice actors and dub stars. The performances are also really good too. These actors really sell their characters. It's a very well acted game, even if every normal enemy has the exact same death cries. And that's pretty much everything I can discuss about No More Heroes on a story and presentation level. There's a lot more that could be said, but due to so much of this game being up for interpretation, I really don't want to tell people how to feel or what to think about it. If you're interested, I'd recommend playing it yourself and drawing your own conclusions. Let's finally talk about gameplay. No More Heroes has been described as a hack and slash, but I'm personally a little hesitant to call it that. Sure, you have a sword, in this case a beam katana, but hack and slash games are typically things like Devil May Cry and Kingdom Hearts with loads of mechanics and systems at the player's disposal. No More Heroes is comparatively much simpler, so I'm inclined to describe it as a beat 'em up with a sword. At a base, No More Heroes' main gameplay loop consists of fighting enemies and bosses with a combination of beam katana slashes, physical punches and kicks, wrestling moves, and special abilities, and either swinging the rear mo or tilting the right stick in an indicated direction to deal a strong or killing blow. I've heard some people complain that this is a game that's based around motion control QuickTime events, but it really isn't. For one, on every version except the Wii original, there's controller support, and in terms of QTEs, that's not really what they are. Sure, they're inputs that appear on the screen, but the game gives you loads of time to execute them, and the only penalty for somehow failing is needing to hit the enemy or boss one extra time to try again. Plus, inputting the wrong direction doesn't cancel the prompt, so you can try again immediately. Overall, the system of whittling enemies down with normal input and then performing one of these special kills is really satisfying, and for me personally, never stops being fun or feeling fulfilling. They were able to base a whole series on this after all. If it sounds like it's a gimmick that would get old after a while, I promise you it doesn't. It stays satisfying for the entire game. I've heard it be described that fighting enemies in No More Heroes is like typing a sentence, and killing them is getting to press period at the end. It's extremely satisfying. You can also land collaterals by performing a killing slash with multiple enemies nearby, which feels incredible. Killing 2, 3, 4, even 5 enemies in one swing will never stop being amazing. In the Wii version, this caused a pretty noticeable amount of lag, but I honestly really liked it. It made it feel more cinematic and impactful. Travis's base skills include high and low beam katana attacks, which can be changed by either tilting the rear mo up or down on Wii, or pressing a different button on the controller, and high and low melee attacks done the same way. While Travis's basic beam katana combos are what you're going to be primarily using to kill enemies, you can also perform a melee combo to stun enemies, allowing you to perform a wrestling move for either an instant kill on normal enemies or massive damage on bosses. You steadily unlock new wrestling moves throughout the game, and the variety can be really fun, especially if you're familiar with wrestling. The game also features a Dark Souls-esque dodge roll, which gives you iframes for its entire duration. This game did, though, come out 2 years before Demon Souls and 4 years before Dark Souls, so make of that what you will. The dodge can be a little finicky, since the trajectory of Travis's dodge is based on the camera position, so it's best used when locked decisively onto enemies where the camera is mostly stagnant. You also, for some reason, can't roll forward, which can be really annoying against enemies or bosses with guns, since you can't use the dodge roll to close the distance. You can also block enemy attacks, but this this comes at the cost of your beam katana's battery. When its charge gets low, you have to recharge it by pressing a button and literally jacking it off. They're not even trying to be subtle. The charge isn't a huge deal, and this isn't one of those games where you'll be spending the entire time micromanaging a weapon stat. It's not like durability in Breath of the Wild, for example. It goes down super slowly and recharges really fast. As long as you're keeping it topped off during boss downtime, you'll be perfectly fine. In addition, the slash reel also exists, which is effectively a slot machine that rolls every time you get a kill. If you get a jackpot, and depending on what symbols you get, you'll be given a wide variety of temporary buffs and temporary new abilities, most of which pertaining to instantly killing enemies. My favorite has to be the bar one, where the screen goes grayscale and you get access to a huge variety of hyper-brutal instant kill animations on enemies. I love this. Due to its random nature, though, the slash reel isn't always as useful as it could be. Sometimes you'll get a jackpot on the last enemy in the room, and whatever effect you have automatically wears off as soon as a cutscene triggers. When it works though, it really works. There's also a charge slash, but it's not really that useful unless you really like killing enemies slowly for like half or more of your charge. I appreciate that it's here flavor-wise, but I don't often use it in my playthroughs. Lastly, there's a technique that I'm pretty sure receives no actual mention in the game itself, known to fans as the dark side step. It's basically a perfect dodge. By tilting the control stick in either direction just as you block an enemy attack, Travis will step to either side of them, darkening the screen and slowing down time, allowing the player to get a free combo and often a throw on bosses. It can be tricky to get down, but once you manage it, it trivializes bosses. It's very powerful when exploited. Those are all of Travis's default abilities, but you can unlock more. Through exploring the open world of Santa Destroy, you can find 49 of these little kickballs known as Lavakov balls. Once you find enough, you can go to the bar near Travis's motel and turn them into this drunk Russian man, appropriately named Lavakov, who'll exchange them at a rate of 7 at a time for new skills. Some of these skills are super helpful, like a jumping slash that automatically downs enemies and the ability to instant kill those downed enemies from any range. It's almost like they were meant to be comboed or something. Others include being able to see enemies on the minimap, a longer grab range, and a dash when not in combat. Not all of them are as useful as others, but if you feel the game is too limited or just want to explore a bit, look for the Lavakov balls. They're all marked by orange pips on the map. Side note, I searched for them in this playthrough for the video, and for the life of me, I could not find the last one. I was checking online maps, I was looking at guides, I just couldn't find it. So I guess I'll forever sit at 48. I didn't want that longer grab range anyways. Talking about Lavakov in the open world, though, yeah, let's talk about the open world. This is understandably one of the more often criticized aspects of the game. With the exceptions of the few main areas that are all centralized around the same point, the Lavakov balls, a few side fights, and the ranking battle entries, this is a barren open world that's way too big for its own good. If you don't want to hunt for the Lavakov balls, there is no point to explore. I guess you can find some t-shirts and money bonuses in dumpsters, but that's not enough to incentivize exploring. It also overcomplicates travel from place to place, since you need to manually bike to each important point. The bike doesn't control the best and is super easy to get stuck on tight geometry. There are times where I've gotten it stuck on like telephone poles and shit. Luckily, all you need to do is hop off and call Travis's best friend Bishop to bring it to you if this happens. The open world in general is easily the least polished part of the game. Plus, in the Wii original, it runs like ass. This was luckily fixed in later versions though. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the open world itself, but let's talk about some of the stuff you can find in it. There's Travis's hotel, an ATM for turning in money, a job center to earn that money, an assassination side mission center to earn even more money, Naomi's lab where you can buy the unlockable beam katanas, Thunder Ryu's gym where Travis's mentor can train you even after his death, Beefhead videos where Travis's friend Bishop sells tapes that you can watch to learn new wrestling moves, the bar where you can trade in Lavakov balls, and Area 51 where you can buy new outfits. Going into more detail about these individually, Travis's motel is the main hub area. Here you can switch beam katanas, change outfits, watch a few videos, save the game, play with Travis's cat, and pointlessly open his fridge. I think this is meant to refill your health since your health meter appears when you do it, but you're always at full health when you're out of combat. It's really weird. I guess it's just a flavor thing. At Naomi's lab, you can buy the game's multiple extra beam katanas. You also buy augmentation parts for them, but I always forget about that. The beam katanas consist of the default Bloodberry, which is both weak and slow, and is quickly replaced. After that, there's Tsubaki Mark 1, which is like a faster version of Bloodberry, Tsubaki Mark 2, which is a huge, heavy, hard-hitting club beam katana with 4 blades, and Tsubaki Mark 3, which is the fastest and strongest in the game, in addition to being the most closely modeled after a real katana, and it also isn't available for purchase until really late in the game after Travis's mentor dies during the rank 3 fight. There's also augmentation parts, which can be used to buff the beam katanas permanently. There's one that costs $999,999 that makes it so you never run out of charge, but I personally don't bother going for that because of the investment. Also, remember that you need every beam katana to unlock the final fight with Henry, so make sure to stay on top of these. Thunder Ryu's gym is where you can play mini-games to permanently increase your health, damage, and combo length at the cost of some money and real-life stamina. These mini-games are fucking tough, man, but they're more than worth it. Also, Thunder Ryu continues training you here even after he dies as a ghost, so he's just the biggest Chad in the series as far as I'm concerned. Beefhead videos and Area 51 are both similar, being straight up shops where you can buy cosmetic stuff. You can buy some videos that teach you new wrestling moves at Beefhead, and you can buy new clothes to customize Travis however you like at Area 51. There's a decent amount of clothing options, so you can really dress Travis in whatever style you want. Thanks to the cutscenes being rendered in-game too, the outfits follow you into cutscenes. It's really nice. Now, let's talk about the job centers. The combat and open world aren't all of No More Heroes after all. In order to participate in the ranking fights, you've gotta fork over an entry fee. Because of this, No More Heroes contains a huge amount of necessary minigame grinding for earning money. Now, you get money just from beating enemies and bosses, but in order to do everything, the beam katanas, the gym training, getting outfits on top of the ranking battles, you're gonna have to grind. There's a wide variety of minigames to play, and some of them are pretty breezy and fun. Others, not too much. This is easily, though, the #1 make-or-break thing to determine whether or not you like No More Heroes. If you can get down with the literal hours of mandatory grinding, or just enjoy the combat enough to get through it, you'll be fine. If not, though, yeah, I understand if you're not a huge fan of the game. Me, personally, I love this game's combat and other mechanics, so I'm more than happy to do the minigames to get more of it. Just for reference, though, the average playthrough of this game is around 11 hours, and at least 4 or 5 of that is going to be grinding on your first playthrough. It eases up on later playthroughs though, since you're guaranteed to start each individual file with around $500,000, which is just under what the final assassination battle costs. In addition to normal jobs, there's also K Entertainment or the assassination side jobs. These are unlocked from playing the normal minigames and are infinitely more fun. These reward you with money for doing brief battles and challenges against normal enemies and are my preferred way to earn money. Specifically, Assassination Mission 7, which requires you to kill 100 enemies in 5 minutes, is great for grinding. The enemies have a health modifier, so they all die in one hit, and they're all very close together, so collaterals come naturally. It pays out 90,000 per run, so it's a very quick way to grind. Plus, if I'm angry about something, I can just put on some music and play this mission a few times. That's my kind of therapy. Because of this required grinding though, No More Heroes is a staggeringly inconsistent game in terms of pacing. The actual combat beat-em-up levels are incredible, some of my favorite sections of any video game ever, but you're always dragged back down afterwards by the minigame sections. It's made even worse by the open world, since in order to repeatedly do jobs, you need to drive to the job center or K Entertainment, drive to the job, then drive back to the job center, and repeat it for each job you want to do. It's pretty lame, and is the one thing I straight up warn people about when they're going to go into the game. I appreciate what they do for the world building, and especially for Travis's character, since to see this guy go from killing people to carrying coconuts and filling cars with gas is pretty funny and helps humble him, but it totally drags the game down. I feel like the sequels both do better in this regard in different ways. I understand why they're here, since the game would be really short without them, but still. I don't think they're enough to ruin the game. It's still one of my favorites of all time, but it's definitely something to be aware of if you're planning on playing it. After earning money, you'll pay at an ATM for entrance into the ranked fight, return to the motel and watch a cutscene, and then sit out for the fight. You'll then play a short level fighting normal enemies, and then begin the boss battle proper. Typically, the boss fights themselves are just as long, if not sometimes longer than the levels that precede them, so there's a good balance between normal enemies and boss fights. I've heard this game be described as a boss rush game, and that really is what it is. In terms of the actual gameplay of the bosses, No More Heroes follows a similar gameplay loop to something like Dark Souls, where you'll be dodging around bosses' attacks and counter-attacking after they use their moves. Interestingly, most bosses in No More Heroes are completely invincible during normal fighting, and are only vulnerable to attack after finishing up an attack of their own. This might make it sound like the bosses are limiting, but they're really not. I personally think it adds an extra layer of strategy, since you can't just hammer away at bosses all the time. You have to carefully consider how long your windows of opportunity to attack the boss are after each of their moves. On top of this, every boss arena contains exactly 1 health pickup and 1 energy pickup for quickly recharging your battery, and this adds even more strategy since you need to carefully consider when to use each of them, as you only get 1 of each per fight. And you know what? Why don't we talk about the bosses individually? They're a big part of this game's identity after all. Let's roll. Death Metal is the first boss and is a perfectly serviceable intro to the series. His design is really striking, being a grizzled old British man covered in tattoos, and his weapon being a laser cleaver is really badass. His monologue with Travis at the beginning of the fight is also exceptionally well written, and is a great introduction to the kind of dialogue and writing that's in store for the player in the game later on. In terms of gameplay, Death Metal is fine. Not exceptional and really simple, but perfectly reasonable for the first boss in the series. The part where he clones himself is a bit annoying, but it doesn't distract from the fight overall. All in all, a good battle. Dr. Peace is the second boss in rank 9, and is one of my personal favorite bosses in the series in terms of personality and writing. He might be my favorite, depending on what day you ask me. The song before you fight him is a clear standout. It's gorgeous and striking, contradicted against truly disturbing and dark lyrics.
When the wind blows, a virgin child comes, sing a song, such a pretty melody never heard before. No more lullaby, the virgin just as them.
His dialogue with Travis at the beginning of the fight is also amazing. You really get a feel for this guy, with him talking about his ambitions of performing in front of a large crowd and lamenting his negative relationship with his family. Once the fight actually begins, it's an interesting concept, but with Dr. Peace fighting exclusively with guns in what's otherwise a very close-range oriented game. You can easily win just by circling around him and closing the distance, but I still love this fight. I also really appreciate the standoff at the end. 8th rank is Shinobu, who's probably the most important and impactful fight in terms of affecting the series going forward. She goes on to become one of the series' primary characters and one of Travis's main allies, and she's also the only boss who survives her fight with Travis. She's also, funnily enough, the wake-up boss, or the Great Tiger of this game, and is probably the first one who will kill you on a first playthrough. She can be shockingly difficult even for an experienced player due to her surprisingly potent burst damage and ability to mix up and chunk the player in an instant. I know a lot of people dislike her, but I really enjoy the fight against Shinobu. Our 7th ranked fight is against Destroy Man, who similarly to Shinobu would go on to become a recurring character in the series. Unlike Shinobu though, he's no ally. I appreciate how different he is from the other bosses, being a primarily melee and projectile focused fight, and his gimmicks like his dick laser and brief puzzle sections are good mix-ups. His personality is also one of the more unique in the game, being a rat bastard whose primary strategy is lying and deceiving his opponents for the win. Compared to the other very honorable and mature bosses you fight, he's a clear standout. A rat bastard to the bitter end. 6th rank is Holly Summers, who is a lot of people's favorite fight in the game. I really appreciate her personality, being a truly mature and wise opponent whose demeanor tests Travis's resolve. I'm not as big on her fight though, I'll admit. The arena being filled with holes that you can fall into is kind of annoying, and her focus on long-range burst damage can make actually getting in to damage her a bit annoying. I still like her fight, especially her personality, but it's one of the ones I like less in the game. Our 5th rank fight is against Let's Shake, and he's... Okay, moving on. No, real talk though. This is an interesting moment in the game, in that the game makes you grind up money for a boss fight and makes you go through a level, only for the boss fight to be literally kill stolen from you with nothing to show for it. I know a lot of people really hate this part of the game, they think it's a slap in the face and a waste of time, but I think it's fucking hilarious. Perfectly sets the stage for the kind of bullshit this series will pull going forward, and I'm 100% here for it. Also, Let's Shake is voiced by D. Bradley Baker, doing pretty much the same voice he does for Klaus on American Dad. It's really noticeable if you're listening for it.
Oh yeah, I feel a good undulation. Your rambling is excellent. I think I'm going to lose the bowel control. Damn you, Hasbro!
4th rank in the game is Harvey Moisevich Wolodarski, who's probably the most disappointing boss in the game for me. He's cool mechanically and perfectly functional, and the concept of a magician who uses his shows as a means of killing people is really interesting, but he's way too easy for the point in the game you fight him at. I have a harder time with Shinobu and Holly Summers than him. He also spams this move where he reverses the screen way too much, and his instant kill is so easy to escape that it's basically just a waste of time, especially for how much he uses it. Again, I like his fight, and his mechanics and concept are perfectly sound. His difficulty for rank 4 is just way too low. He also gets probably the most brutal death in the game. Our third rank fight is against Speedbuster, and she is straight up the only boss in the game that I dislike. Her fight is kind of interesting conceptually, being effectively a truncated level with normal enemies throughout, but it's really lame in execution, and basically just boils down to ducking in and out of buildings while you avoid her lasers. I also really hate that the fight is ultimately decided by hitting an environmental object that the player can't lock onto, meaning that it's super difficult to figure out what you need to do when playing blind. The game does not have much environmental interaction aside from this. All in all, this is definitely the worst fight in the game for me, and the only one I truly dislike. I do enjoy her weapon though, being a shopping cart that turns into a giant laser cannon. Kinda makes me wonder how she reached rank 3 with it being so linear, but whatever. After Speedbuster is the aptly named Bad Girl, who's another major player in the series these days. Her design and concept are low-key super disturbing, being a cutesy-dressed alcoholic girl who gets off on hurting and killing people. Makes you wonder what her life is like. The fight itself is also really fun. Her moveset is kind of limited, but she adds enough variations to it throughout the fight to keep you on your toes. She also has a well-telegraphed, but still very effective instant kill counter, so stay away from her when you see her doing this. The fight is also super long, among the longest in the game, so your mistakes will add up. I'm not surprised at all that they brought Bad Girl back to life later in the series, given how strong her fight and striking her design are. Though I remember this really prevalent fan theory back in the day that she was Dr. Peace's daughter, due to the fact that both of them are fought at the baseball stadium, and that Dr. Peace mentions having a bad relationship with his kid, but I guess Travis Strikes Again kinda put the kibosh on that one. Regardless, a great fight, one of my favorites in the game. Our first final boss is against Jean, who's one of the more interesting fights in the game mechanically. She doesn't have a lot of health, but she dodges and weaves around your attacks super effectively, can't be thrown with wrestling moves at all, and leaves very little time to counterattack after she acts. She's decently difficult, and I love the fake out of having the fight end on a force loss struggle that leads into a cutscene. Makes you think you fucked up for a second. A perfectly fine and challenging penultimate battle. I wouldn't say I'd be very happy if this is the final fight I got in the game, but luckily we've got one more. Our true final boss is against Sir Henry motherfucker Cooldown himself, and I'll be 100% honest, this is my favorite fight in the No More Heroes series, and possibly my favorite boss fight in any video game, period. Remember when I said that Bad Girl's fight was long? Yeah, this fight took me a half an hour to complete on my recorded playthrough, even with max strength, the strongest beam katana, and all of the power augmentations. This is a truly knockdown, drag-out, grueling battle where you can't afford to make many mistakes. Henry's moveset is incredibly fast and unpredictable, and if you get hit by his one-hit kill, which is also one of the flashiest animations in the game, you are starting it all over. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. This is a prime example of a super boss, and easily my favorite fight in the series. The cutscene that follows is also incredible, among my favorites in any game. And that's all of the bosses. Before we close out this video though, I want to discuss some small little flavor things that truly make No More Heroes the special game that it is. Before every boss fight, there's this awesome boss introduction where this wispy, ghostly voice reads the boss's name and displays a silhouette of the boss teasing their design, which really helps add to the mystery and atmosphere surrounding each boss fight.
Holy summer.
Still just a fight.
Destroy man.
Come and get some.
Voice wits.
Let's see what you're made of, country boy.
I didn't find out until years later that this voice is just a default text-to-speech voice on Mac computers, and as soon as I found it out, I had someone replicate it for me with my name. It was really cool. In between each boss fight, there's these really fun little cutscenes showing just how much fun Sylvia is having with Travis's money, in addition to these really amusing phone calls to Travis scolding him for his perversion and refusal to return movies to his local video store. Makes you wonder how Bishop stays friends with this guy when he keeps stealing and taping over your movies. At the end of every level, but before every boss fight, you're treated to a brief phone conversation with Sylvia where the player still has full control of Travis while he talks on the phone. What's interesting about this is that in the original Wii version, Sylvia's voice actually comes through the Wii Remote speaker, which is really funny if you're a 13-year-old playing this game trying to hide from your parents that you're playing an M-rated game.
You are the man. I am the tiger. He only looks tough because his mother was an ugly bitch. Take it to the red zone. A second's way at full throttle. Unleash your power. Show no mercy. Bring me death metal set!
Regardless, afterwards you get the option to save your game, which at every single save point in the game is done by taking a shit. Very classy, No More Heroes. And lastly, I want to mention the opening to this game, which is one of my favorites in any video game. Not really the opening cutscene, but rather the intro to the game itself. It hits the ground running super hard. We see Travis busting into Death Metal's mansion, killing 2 of his goons, interrogating another one who's understandably fearful, and then immediately killing him as well due to his refusal to answer him. He then looks at the camera, says it's game time, and the game begins. It is a remarkable opening and perfectly sets the stage for what's to come. So, No More Heroes. Like I said at the beginning, this is a game and series that's extremely important to me. It's among my 5 favorite games of all time, and is my go-to example of how style and a clear directorial vision can be more than enough to carry a game. Its gameplay, while a bit repetitive and certainly inconsistent, is just dynamic, complex, and satisfying enough to keep you playing, and the incredibly sharp and witty writing and satire make this game a clear standout of both the era it was released and gaming in general. If you haven't played it and feel like you can jive with what I've shown here, definitely pick it up. It's not a niche Wii game anymore. It's literally more available now than it's ever been, but with the current Steam and Switch ports selling for a meager $20. No More Heroes is special. There is no other game like it, and the fact that a game as shaky and inconsistent as this went on to spawn a successful and beloved series, even after 10 years of silence and dismal Japanese sales, is a clear demonstration of its staying power. No More Heroes is my version of paradise. Thanks for watching.
Let's go!